and then the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Sarah. So my name is Jim Ward. I'm CEO of BrainSell. I'm the founder of BrainSell. We're a 26-year-old firm. Not that that has anything to do with today's conversation. We're having a water cooler series. This one is leadership skills to embrace when managing a remote team. And this pandemic, this challenge has created a lot of remote teams, including for us. Fortunately, we were prepared for us going to a remote prior to this happening. But we have a panel of folks today, esteemed panelists, and I'm going to introduce them. Again, I'm Jim Ward. I'm the founder of BrainSell, and we have with us today a best-selling author, Lisa McLeod. She has written books such as Leading with Noble Purpose, which is really kind of our focus today. We're big fans. Selling with Noble Purpose would be another. Triangle of Truth, Finding Grace. You can find her on Amazon. We are big fans and have read most of the books, not all of them, but most of them, Leading and Selling with Noble Purpose. Then we have our esteemed Theresa Conway, who's our Chief Operating Officer. She has been the person who has really brought rigor to our business over the last 2 years. She has implemented the Entrepreneurial Operating System, another book that we follow, which is Traction by Gino Wickman. And then we also have Elizabeth Latardo. She's one of our panelists. She has her master's in industrial and organizational psychology and is vice president of client services at McLeod and Moore. Also with us today is Sarah Reed, our vice president of marketing, who will be the audience question facilitator. All right, so you all are great leaders here, by the way. And I just realized, and I know this seems weird, I just realized once again we have a leadership team here on the panelist group that are all women. And so that's wonderful. My company is led by women. I'm the only man on our leadership team. So I think having that kind of diversity is very important culturally. So thank you for being here, all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. So before we start off, we have every meeting that we do, we start off with a health check. It's a part of that entrepreneurial operating system that I mentioned to you. And so I'm going to ask all of you who are on the panel, who have been in leadership positions, tell me from a health check perspective how you're feeling right now based on the current situation. And I'm going to also ask, before we answer, the audience members to go into your chat room and tell us quickly how you're feeling out there with the new changing and challenging circumstances. So perhaps I could start with Lisa.
The way you phrase the question is interesting, how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. I can tell you work with women. And this is a really important question. I'm going to answer it in two ways, because in today's time, it's really easy to focus on the facts and the transaction, but how people are feeling colors everything. So I am feeling actually two conflicting ways. On the one hand, I am feeling very anxious about our economy and about our clients, and it's just general anxiety about what's going on. But on the other hand, I'm also feeling very empowered. And by that, I don't mean to mitigate the true tragedies that people are going through, but I'm feeling empowered because the basis of our business is around noble purpose, leaning into a new type of business reality. And so I'm seeing the landscape for that was moving in that direction, but had a dramatic shift. So when I look to the future, I'm feeling empowered about our organization. When I look to the present moment, it'd be easy to feel anxious.
Yes, right. You know, I'm sorry, have you applied for PPE or any of the stimulus packages?
We did, and we weren't sure, to be honest, whether we should or we shouldn't. It was a debate because we are a very small firm. I've also am someone that lived through the recession and learned some very valuable lessons there. And just in full transparency, you know, everyone says you should have, I read several years ago, Jim Collins said, we have a year's worth of operating expenses in cash in the bank. And so we do.
Yes.
Because if you've ever struggled to make payroll, you don't want that to happen to you again.
Nope.
So Yeah, so we did apply, but we haven't been super proactive. We're gonna see whether the bank puts it through or not. And we
Okay.
decided that if we did get something, that we would use it for the greater good.
Well, very good. And I will just tell you in the audience that we did apply and we were successful.
Oh, okay.
And so it was very important to me to have continuity of employment for folks. And as we come out of this, we have some wonderful people and I want them to be here with us. So I'm going to move to Elizabeth. How are you feeling with the
Well,
changes?
I'd echo Lisa's comments around both anxious and empowered, but I think another emotion that's really playing a critical role here in our ability to navigate this is gratitude. So something that I've been trying to focus on is gratitude for, obviously the four of us are very healthy at the moment. We haven't been as impacted as, recognizing the human good that is coming out of this is crucially important for our ability to stay sane.
And with your background in industrial and organizational psychology, what does that lend to the current situation? I'm not sure I'm phrasing the question correctly, but does that experience lend some insights to how people are feeling?
Absolutely. I think the ability to feel gratitude, especially in moments where it's easy to succumb to emotions like despair, easy to succumb to anxiety, is going to be what gets individuals and businesses through this crisis. Because when we feel gratitude, we quiet that amygdala brain, we're able to think more clearly, we're more creative, we're more empathetic to the people around us, all those really tactical and emotional pieces that are going to help us navigate this. So a quick way to quiet the anxiety is to focus on what you're grateful for.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do find, and I often think about, folks who experience depression. I think it's a very, very fine line. And as you approach it, you can perhaps if you get over that line, it can be devastating. And so I often talk about, you need to work on your mind as much as you do your body. If you go to the gym, you need to have mental things that you're doing to help you stay sane or healthy. That be meditation or exercise to release some dopamine. And so that's something I've been really suggesting to our remote folks to get involved in. We do yoga here on Wednesdays when we were in the office and meditate on Fridays. So we're trying to continue that. Elizabeth, I'm sorry, Teresa, I almost missed you. I'm so sorry. I would never miss you. Last, but certainly not least, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling generally well. I feel like we just had this, we picked up a big snow globe and shook the snow globe and everything's kind of flying around us. So echoing a lot of what Lisa and Elizabeth mentioned in terms of the emotions we're going through. I'm trying to have structure in my day now, working at home with my 3 teenagers and my husband. It's certainly a new experience for me, having all my teenagers home all at once. So that's added a little bit of emotion during the day, but trying to find structure in my day, exercising every morning. That we're using this term social distancing, but I think it doesn't quite adequately portray what we're all going through. We're being physically distant, but really focusing on social connection. So trying to connect with people socially using the tools and technology that we have. We hosted, for everyone here at BrainSell, we hosted a yappy hour with our dogs. So we had a lot of fun doing that. And then we had a virtual lunch. So trying to forge those social connections using the technology. And that's helped, I think, for us all to establish a new normal.
Yeah, and we're continuing to do that with we have a happy hour with engineers coming up soon. Can't wait for that one. By the way, I'm very happy to see that we're getting folks putting into the chat room how they're feeling. I encourage you to do that because perhaps some of our panelists can address some of the feelings that you have while we're on this call today. And Sarah will help parse those out as we go through our questions. So moving on, Lisa, you wrote a great book on leadership. I know Teresa's a super fan of this, and that our leadership team has all read by a month ago, what it was like a month ago, perhaps, versus what kind of style leadership should we be embracing today? Is there a difference?
There is a difference. And I'll tell you, in the past, transactional leadership could survive. What changed with this crisis is this is the death of transactional leadership and the death of transactional selling. Because in the past, when you were focused internally on your organization, growing your business, growing revenue, that was a story that if your product was good enough, the market would respond to. But now what's happened in this crisis is the difference between leaders who truly care about their people and their customers and who put that as their North Star, the leaders who do that versus the leaders who have sort of defaulted to, we got to grow the revenue, and made that their prevailing story. It's become so transparent. And I was on another call and someone was talking about being a poker player. And I'm not a card player, but there's a tell. And the leadership language is always the tell. And I think what's happening now is a lot of very well-intended leaders, like you said, you're worried about payroll and keeping your people. And so a lot of well-intended leaders who are worried about their business are making a mistake of turning it into just a money conversation. And while that might get some activity with your people, it's not very interesting to your customers.
Thank you. And I would again encourage our audience to tell us about the leadership faux pas perhaps you're seeing from your leadership teams, or if you are a leader, what are you doing that's different, or what are you embracing? So with that, I'm going to ask you, Theresa, since you're CEO here at COO, I said that in a quick slur, here at BrainSell, is what Lisa has said, does it resonate with you? How have you found that your leadership has changed here? What are you doing differently? What are you doing the same? How do you feel about Lisa's comments?
Well, when I first heard Lisa speak, it was a transformational event for me, and we've since read both of her books. At the time, when I heard what she was talking about and delivering value to our customers, it was like that feeling you get when you put out a hoodie on and it just kind of warms you up. So much of what we were doing with our customers, we hadn't really internalized that as a focus for us. So we were able to use leading with noble purpose and selling with noble purpose as really a handbook for us. We spent time defining our noble sales purpose and really use that in every day we think about that. We actually went so far as to create these job aids. So it has our noble sales purpose on it, and then the key messages from her book, both leading with noble purpose and selling with noble purpose. So everyone has taken that home with us. They're job aids that we keep close by. We slipped covered them so that they will have a long life. And that's been something that we've been able to help bring out to our customers. So in these, one of the first things that we did after we all were started working at home is we had a day when we called out to our customer base and we just asked them, how are you doing? And how's everything going for you? And what can we do to help? And not with a focus of selling them, but just connecting with them and seeing if there's anything that we can do from our arsenal of products and services that we normally work with. But outside of that, this is what we did with our cybersecurity firm, and this is what we've done. We've heard from other customers. So just sharing and really connecting. And even more so now that we're all working remotely, it's important that we articulate why we get up and go to work in the morning. So I think that's one thing that has become more of a mantra to us, is that it's more the reasons why we get up, because we're wanting to help our customers. It's not just that we're going to work, and we don't have our commutes anymore, but we are showing up at our desks every day and putting in the time to really help our clients. And we're helping them continue to help them be successful, and then also how to navigate these troubled waters. So I think that's the thing that's shifted, is less of a focus on, the sales and meeting quotas, but just helping them succeed and navigate these waters as well.
That's a good point. And by the way, here's the good things to keep close by. All those sheets are in here. We all have them at BrainSell. Theresa's terrific about keeping that for us. So we're thinking about your messages, Lisa, and other authors that we follow. So got my mind a little bit off track there, but let's go to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I kind of, I've already kind of brought this up, but you have your master's in industrial and organizational psychology. And I'm imagining you're paying close attention and studying how executives are navigating these in certain times. Can you talk us through some of your observations?
Definitely. I think we're all paying close attention to not only how our own companies are navigating this, but how the companies we buy from are navigating this. And to Lisa's point, one thing we know about people in general is that there is a desire for meaning at work. People want purpose and fulfillment and to know that they're making a difference. But when they go through a challenging time in their life, be it an illness, a job loss, a really traumatic experience, they tend to reevaluate their relationships with their employer, their relationships with the rest of the people in their family, their life in general. And what used to be, propelled by individual circumstance here and there is now being experienced collectively. So as a society, we are reevaluating. We are reevaluating what it means to work where we work. We are reevaluating what it means to be a customer of the businesses we frequent. And I think something like this has the power to really shift organizational performance far beyond this pandemic, because customers and employees are assessing at a level that they just didn't used to, propelled by this shared collective trauma.
Do you have any predictive outcomes when this is over from
That's
the
a good
shifts?
question. I think the obvious answers are the employees, the companies, the businesses that treat people well, that innovate, that pivot, that were financially sound to begin with, and whether this crisis will prevail. But I also think that this is giving a lot of companies an opportunity to reinvent. And I think the organizations that take the time and foster that collaboration with their team, double down on a noble purpose and stay committed to that in times of turmoil, will be the ones that not only come out of this okay, but come out of this with drastically different products, with new lines, with a renewed commitment to delivering on their purpose. So I think the results will be, to some degree, pretty predictably financial. Everyone will rebound who was sound to begin with. But I think that we will see a few emerging stars, and it'll show in 6, 12, 18 months who really spent their time doubling down on serving customers.
And adaptation, learning a lot of folks miss the skill set of adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a local auto detailer as a story who he details cars, but not many folks are bringing cars in right now. And he took his same equipment and he shifted it to disinfecting offices. And I thought that was a great shift. Very smart, thinking outside the box and adapting. So I hope we're all doing that. I know internally we do that. We're really trying to think about, what markets can we serve, what markets are more, have some demand right now.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that Gladiator Day of we calling out just to check on customers with no intent of sale, I will tell you that it resulted in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the intent though. Very happy to take them. But it allowed us to understand also each individual situation, so we knew how to assist them going forward, and what we could send them. We're sending information out when we heard issues. For example, we had one fellow who's a retailer in the lighting industry, and no customers now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're sending him the PPE information, making sure he gets information to help his company continue, because we want him to be a good customer going forward too. We want him to be okay. Okay, so stop my rambling for a second. Lisa, before this event, you and I had a conversation, and I thought it was really interesting. And that, it was you had said for leaders to focus on creating a vision of what you want your team to look like at the end of this. That was, I think, something you had said to me. So for example, for me to create a vision of what I want our team to look like when this is over. Can you talk us through some of or elaborate what you meant by that? Can you elaborate what you meant by that?
Yeah, I think it's the starting point that I want to use is this idea of being both resilient and innovative. So the market that you're serving and your product offering are going to likely have to pivot. And so when I talk about, though, what your team looks like, that can be a constant. What I mean by that is what I would encourage leaders to do is thinking about what your customers need now and your product offering and the way your business needs to pivot is one conversation. But put that conversation in the corner for a minute and think about what kind of people do I want to have in my organization? Do I want to have people who are resilient? Do I want to have people who are laser focused on listening to customers and understanding what they need? That is a very different thing than your current business model. And so what happens as leaders is we tend to put all those things together, and we call it the big fat giant hairball, when you gotta kind of pick a couple of things out. And so the things that we know to be true are we do not have a playbook for this. However, there are some leadership truisms that we can lean on. And if you look back to the recession, it affected almost everyone. But the firms that had this purpose bigger than money, that used their time wisely to grow their people, develop their people, and forge stronger relationships with their customers, they came roaring out of the recession. And so when I think about who I want people to be, we had a call, and I don't think they would mind us sharing this. We had a call with the LinkedIn Learning government sales team last week. So think about the people that sell LinkedIn Learning to the government. And we sat there and we said, in an ideal world, what do we want our government employees to look like? We want them smarter. We want them more efficient. We want them more effective. We want them more resilient. We want them more creative. And if they can play a role in helping the government employees get 10% better at all those things,
Right.
that will be their service to our country. And so as you think about your own team, it's really about, sales is changing, leadership is changing, that's a given. What kind of people do you want, and how are you going to build those skills beyond the business model?
So, and I'm not trying to sell anything here, but one of the things that I've consistently wanted is we are big readers of books, and that goes to you all being author. You being an author, you probably like that, right? We're reading your books too, so that's even better.
You know how to woo a woman.
Yes, I do. Yeah, but it's not very expensive to buy books, and for sending them out to your team, if there's things you want them to learn and look like at the end of this, depending on what those learnings are, and holding a book club. We've got the technology to hold book club, what the learnings are. We do that here at BrainSell, and I'm really suggesting to the audience members to consider that with your teams. Take the time out to invest maybe in Audible or some books. It's not very expensive, and it really will help boost their level of continual improvement, because we do have some downtimes, and perhaps that will be filled to fill those voids. All right, this is for everybody. Let's just talk about motivation for a second. In our last water cooler series, we had Todd Capone of the Transparency Sale, who was the author of the Transparency Sale. By the way, do you know Todd, Lisa?
Not personally, but I know his work.
We'll have to make an introduction. So he brought up the concept of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Which one do remote employees need right now, do you think? Everybody. This goes to everybody. Extrinsic versus intrinsic. And for the audience, maybe I should just say extrinsic would be you're motivated to perform an activity to earn a reward or avoid a punishment. Intrinsic would be motivated to perform an activity for its own sake or for personal rewards.
Is it against the rules to say both?
No, you can say there's no rules. Well, there's rules. When I do my reviews of lunches, everybody knows the rules, one bite. But anyways, there's no rules on this.
All right. I would say both.
Okay. Why?
I think intrinsic motivation is obviously ideal. And if an organization is working to develop a purpose-driven culture, and if individual leaders have been fostering that pre-COVID, that should be steadfast, but we all need a little bit of a jump.
So Elizabeth, then how do we as leaders get folks to be intrinsically motivated?
Well, I think Lisa made a great point earlier on painting a picture of the world, you know, a cause bigger than money, a collective thing that we are all working towards, be it impact on our customers, impact on our community, impact on each other. Having that sense of shared purpose can get you through a hard time in a way that an extrinsic motivator won't, that carrot and stick mentality. But the carrot and stick does come in handy if you have employees who are truly suffering from, you know, an inability to focus, having really deep anxiety. There is a place for extrinsic motivation.
Excellent. Lisa, and by the way, I want you all to remind me, because I have a horrible memory, because we do have I'm not supposed to tell my secret. Remember I mentioned that earlier.
Right.
It has to do with this. So if somebody will remind me before this is over to talk about that, because it does have an element of intrinsic motivation. Lisa, can I go to you on that, on that same question?
Yeah, so I agree with both. What I will also say is most leaders are not that skilled at developing intrinsic motivation. They often think that people just have it or they don't. And what our research has shown is top performers have it, but you can develop it in everyone else. And so the important things that leaders need to know right now is human beings, once we get beyond food and shelter, have two fundamental needs: belonging and significance. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and we want to know that our part matters. And so the way that you build that as a leader is through story, actually. And so now is the time. You're not having those, we're doing a virtual water cooler, which is much needed because you're not having those anecdotal conversations. So if you want to build intrinsic motivation in your people, which is directly tied to resilience and tenacity, if you want to build that with your people, the single best thing, if you take nothing else away from this session, is tell a story about how your offering makes a difference to customers. That lays down a story in people's heads, and that's how you start to build a belief. And doing good by the community and all of these other things is really crucial, but you want to have at the center of your business model a story, a clear, articulate, fact-based story about how you make a difference to customers, because that's something that people can draw from. If you look in times of challenge, people draw from stories that they've heard about other people facing challenges. And so go back, if you've got that first sale that your company made and you remember why you made it and how pleased the customer was, not just pleased, but how it impacted the customer, start telling that story. Because that's how you build this tribe of believers that can weather some of the ups and downs they may be going through right now.
Do you have an example of somebody that's doing that right now?
I absolutely have an example of somebody who's doing that right now. So I just had a call with them. We have a company that we work with, and I think it's really important because a lot of people think, well, the people who are the real heroes of this are the food service people and the healthcare providers. And that is absolutely true. There are also a number of less visible people that are making a big difference. And so we have a client that we work with. Their stories on our website, a company called SupportWorks out of Omaha, Nebraska. They are a blue collar company. And what they told me was their purpose, we work with them on this, is to redefine the industry and to set a new expectation for what people expect of home contractors. They do work in people's homes, they do concrete, they do basements. And they have dealers all across the country. And so what the stories that they're telling their dealers right now, who are very worried about revenue, who have had to, furlough people, who can't go into people's homes right now, they're telling stories about what they've done for their customers in the past to remind people that what they do is so valuable. The story about how they shored up someone's basement and it created a better foundation for their house. I mean, it doesn't sound that sexy,
right?
But if I'm sitting there and I'm a dealer and I'm lying at home and I'm worried about making my numbers and my heart is pounding, I need to know, like, this business matters. This isn't just some money thing here. This is like a viable thing. And so I use it as an example. Look at what you all do. Look at the way that you help people connect with customers. the more you can tell that story, you're going to ground people psychologically, and you're going to point them in the direction that you want them to go, which is towards making a difference to your customers.
Thanks, Lisa. And again, Teresa, last but not least, what about the intrinsic versus extrinsic?
So
Easy for me to say.
I greatly appreciate Lisa and Elizabeth's perspective on this, you know, working in that field and having a better grasp of the research. But intuitively to me, it would seem that intrinsic motivation is what really matters right now. You know, I think inherently people want to do their best. And the way that they do their best when they're by themselves is when they're motivated by helping other people. And that's the intrinsic motivation. There's not somebody standing over them saying, you know, get this done, get this done, get this done. It's the connections that they have with other people that are motivating them to put forth the extra effort, to show up, to be there for their customers. And that's something that you can't teach people. It's something that's inherently within themselves. So my vote is for intrinsic motivation.
And, you know, here at BrainSell, I think we've had to shift our thinking a little bit. You still have, I don't think there should, I personally don't think people should feel guilty about selling during this period of time. And I do think a lot of companies or people feel guilty. I noticed that within our own team in some cases, but I think you have to shift your thinking about what is it we do that actually is going to help you, like you're saying, telling your story, but figuring out and shifting it, and it really underscores selling with a noble purpose. What is it we can do in certain industries, of course, restaurants, I don't know what the heck I could do for a restaurant other than review them and try to get people to go to them in a delivery takeout. I do that on Facebook, by the way, just trying to uplift my local restaurants. But there are certain companies that can use assistance right now. And it's just a shift towards that, and it's really underscoring the noble purpose. Mm-hmm. So it brings up a point. So I said there was a secret. We have couple more questions, but we have a little secret. And we also are doing we have a give back program at BrainSell, and we had our meeting yesterday. And of course, the give backs that we were considering are give backs we can't do right now. Perhaps they were involved with getting groups together, et cetera. So my story was I was at a liquor store. I was getting it for somebody else. Not for
All
me.
good stories start with
a liquor store.
Liquor store.
By the way, that's excellent. Lisa, we'll talk later. And so I was there, and I noticed a couple of young people come in, and I had my mask on, and they had no masks. And at first, if I were being completely transparent, I felt angry that they weren't considering me and others. But then I had a sense after of empathy and thinking perhaps they don't have the ability to get a mask and they're still going about their daily lives. So we're going to be doing what's called a sew-a-thon to make as many masks as we can. My wife is going to lead it, and we want to get them out through distribution points in our local communities. So to me, that lends itself with our whole team to an intrinsic motivation. That's my story. Any thumbs up? Anything?
Well, it's gonna be great. It's a virtual sew-a-thon, and we'll have sew and no sew options. So it should be a lot of fun.
Very cool.
So one interesting thing that people need to remember in light of you all doing this is a lot of people are Zooming. You're Zooming with, or whatever technology you're using. You're Zooming with your colleagues. People are also doing Zoom calls with their friends and family. And one of the things that people need to remember from an employment standpoint, prior to this, we were at practically zero unemployment.
Right.
And people were, just going to grab anybody that they could get. But that's not going to be the case coming out of this. And the reason I bring this up is when people get together with their family and friends, they're going to be talking about what their company is doing. And so reputations are going to be made or broken during this time. Right. It is a defining moment for companies, and it is a defining moment for individual leaders because, Elizabeth mentioned, if you go through a challenging time, a health scare, a death or something, you distinctly remember who said what during that time. Your memory is much sharper because a lot of things are coming at you. And so what's happening now is people are going to get on a Zoom call. I was on one with my whole family, like 8 of us, and they're like, what's your company doing? What's your company doing? Mm-hmm. And so people are going to remember. And so I think that's the thing. The words of the leader now and the actions have outsized importance. And I love that you guys are doing this. I would also say you already had this sense of purpose and focus on your customers. And one of the things we always say in our business, there's a Chinese proverb, when is the best time to plant a tree? 100 years ago. That was the best time to get your purpose, was
Good.
before, but the second best time is today.
Right. Well, we're sure glad we read the book 100 years ago, but it wasn't 100 years
Years
ago.
ago.
Because that would date you and I would be horribly embarrassed. But Lisa, we started the discussion today on a health check. Talk to us about the relationship between knowing your team's emotional compass and success.
Mm-hmm. So we have this belief in business that all the decisions that we make are logical and that people respond logically to things. And that is completely not true. And so as a leader, you have got to take some responsibility, not all the responsibility, but some responsibility for creating a sound emotional infrastructure for your people. And that means giving them clarity of purpose. That means holding space for them to feel whatever it is they're feeling. And that means also continuing to provide them with a story of belonging and significance. That's how you create an emotional infrastructure for your people that will steer them through this time. Having said that, it's not all on the leader. You know, one of the things I'm reminded of is there was a story in the news about 7 or 8 years ago. There was a cruise ship. We're talking about cruise ships again. There was a cruise ship that had, I don't know if it was food poisoning or some sort of stomach flu went through and the stabilizers went out and they were at sea and it was terrible.
Right.
And do you know who emerged as the leader? Wasn't the captain, wasn't co-captain, it was the comedian. The comedian was the one who kept everyone calm. And the reason, I've given this a lot of thought, why the comedian? And what I came to realize is a lot of leaders rise to prominence based on their expertise of the task. But a comedian understands, if they're good, they understand human nature.
Right.
And they understand what people need to hear. You can't be funny if you don't understand what makes people tick. And so I think what we're seeing now is the job of the leader, it's not just the task. The job of the leader now has outsized importance for creating that emotional infrastructure that makes people strong.
That's an awesome story, the comedian. By the way, I would tell everybody here, if you're feeling at all blue, get on Netflix, Prime, whatever you got for streaming, watch comedy. Get some laughter in your soul. It really is fulfilling. I know for me, it just lifts us back up. I have my son watch comedy. If he's feeling blue, watch some comedy. It's not the end all, but it's something.
It'll ignite the right brain chemicals to give you some resilience.
It does. Yes, it does. Okay, this is for everybody. This is one of our last questions before we go to open audience. And again, I want the audience members to participate, not only now with telling us who they feel has gotten it right or wrong when I ask the question, putting it in the chat room, but also be prepared with some questions for your panelists here. You can use the chat room. We can unmute you as well if you'd like to raise your hand. So that's an option as well. The question is, what are some of the leadership teams or companies that are getting it right now? And has anyone specifically stood out as a company or leadership team? And what would be the example? And audience members, please punch in your answers, and panelists. Let's start with Elizabeth.
I think the obvious answers are, Google has made huge press in their small business funding. LinkedIn Learning has gotten huge press for unlocking all of these courses on finding a new job, on pivoting. But the pizza shop down the road from me is doing make your own pizza kits. And they're, balling up dough. You have all your little toppings and ramekins, and they're hosting Facebook Lives on how to make your pizza. So I think as easy as it is to get hung up in these huge enterprise level organizations, like the Texas Roadhouse CEO, I think, who is donating his salary, it's just as equally important to recognize the small businesses among us who are doing their best to do right by their employees and continue to serve customers.
I think that's a great example, because small businesses very important to the fabric of our business communities.
Absolutely.
Theresa?
Yeah, so the one I would have to say is getting it right is REI. So everybody knows REI, the co-op, the member-owned co-op, and the CEO gave up his salary for 6 months, and the leadership team, the executive team, gave up their 20% of their salaries while they had to furlough employees. They also gave up bonuses for the rest of 2020. So recognizing that the employees are impacted, they have to lay people off of their big retail operations, but then also showing that they have skin in the game in this also. So that's kind of on a national level, a little bit closer to home. We have a business partner that we work with, Blue Ridge Partners, who have sent us some emails about ways that we can look at our sales, our financial situation. So sharing advice with us, advice that they give to their customers and pay a fee for, they're giving away for free. So just all in the name of we're in this together and we want to come out of this together as well.
Thanks, Theresa. Lisa?
I want to comment on the two things that both the ladies said. The CEOs that give up their salary and executive teams, some of the financial analysts have said about that, well, it's a drop in the bucket. It's not going to make that big a difference, but they're missing the point.
Right.
When the CEO does that, he is telling every employee, he or she is saying, I am with you, I stand with you, and you are my priority. So when the CEOs and executives of the world do that, empathy is a superpower in a crisis, and that is what they're showing. I want to go to the reach outs and the pizza chains and things like that. I'll tell you someone who's locally doing a great job is my bank. Now, how many people talk about their bank and go, woo-hoo?
Yep.
And the reason my bank is doing a great job, they are emblematic of what I'm seeing from some others, is the way they did their reach out. So a mistake I'm seeing is people have their usual messaging and then they do what I call the COVID cover, where they have their regular message and they do, it's a crazy time right now, I hope you're faring well, insert usual message here. And it totally does not work at all. Right. Everyone sees through that. But my bank sent out a message saying how concerned they were, and it's Bank South in Georgia, and they sent out a message saying how concerned they were about small businesses, and they said, if you use your debit card to take out anything, whatever you're doing, we'll give 5% back to the business. The reverse of how that usually goes.
Right.
But I think the thing that I loved was the message was so clear. And, you know, when you think about, like Theresa, you said people are just providing information. One of the things that people are tempted to do is to provide, to say, here's what we want to provide you, and here's what we want to get in return. And you got to remember that in a personal conversation or a LinkedIn message or an email, there's going to be a couple of back and forths. So you don't have to put everything in the first message. And what I love that some of these folks are doing is just put your generosity in the first message. And then if it goes back and forth a bit, maybe there's an opportunity for you or maybe there's not. But people's antenna are way up to the COVID cover. It does not work.
Right. Thanks, Lisa. We're at that time. We're going to open up the audience, but I'm going to, before we do, I'm going to just end it with my story, and I'm going to give a shout out to my bank. Same thing. Institution for Savings. You know, I didn't perceive them as a big SBA lender, but that's our bank. We applied the first day it was available on April 3rd, I believe, a Friday. Contacted them over there. They literally helped us every step of the way, so that we received the funding very quickly, which goes to being able to help the entity here, that entity being BrainSell, and the folks who support the entity. So a big shout out to my bank. They were very helpful and worked all through the weekend, nights, getting these things done for local businesses. All right, so it's time to open it up for questions. Again, put your questions in the chat. Sarah, you're leading this.
Yep.
And open up microphones. Are you able to open microphones if they want it?
Yep. So if you have questions, you can click on that Q&A button, I think it's probably on the bottom of your screen,
Mhm.
or put them in the chat if that's easier for you, or just click on the raise your hand and we can unmute your microphone. So while we're waiting for those questions to come in, I did have two that I jotted down while we were talking. And one is around new employees. So some companies, they've hired new employees maybe right before this happened, or in some circumstances, they're having to hire new employees and onboard them now while we're in the middle of this crisis. Do you have any tips around like how to support those new employees, build relationships with them? Should they be treated differently than older employees? What are your thoughts around that? And I'll pose that to everyone.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts. We've had a couple clients go through this situation, and the thing that, so has anybody seen that show Love is Blind?
Yes.
Yes.
Not for very long.
No, I didn't get through it, but I watched it.
So Love is Blind is, I believe it's a Netflix show where people are matched up and they have conversations with each other where they can't see each other. And they become very intimate very quickly, and they form these real connections. And the surprise to the producers was how real the connections were, how quickly. And so the reason I use that as an example, if you're onboarding a new employee, they need to understand your culture in a faster way and a more clear way than ever before. They need to know who you are and what you stand for immediately. The other skills and things that you need to do are important, and most leaders generally have a handle on that because they've onboarded people before. But what takes absolute priority right now in terms of languaging and connecting with them is it's literally like Love is Blind, where you're on one side of the screen, they may be remote, and you need to let them know who you are and what you stand for as fast as you possibly can in a meaningful way, because you want them connected to you very fast.
One of the things that we've done is every single call that we have, we turn our videos on. So it's an amazing level of connection, just that video. I have a quick story to tell. In a previous life, I was working for a global company, and I was in the US, and I had a colleague that lived in Russia. And we were, American, Russian, but both worked for the same company. The moment that we turned on that video, we were no longer American and Russian, we were business colleagues. And I can't overstate that enough, how important that is to have that video. And we use a tool internally called Teams. It's Microsoft Teams, where there's the collaboration and chat feature, which is really important. So we have different chat groups, some that are more business focused and some that it's called Chatter. That's the chat group name, and it's just for random chatter and posting of dogs throughout the day. But it has a great feature where you can spin up a video right there, then and there, and call somebody. So you might find yourself chatting, but then you just video call them. And so that's been a great feature just to keep us all connected as we work remotely.
Yeah, and it's funny, we had a conversation that sometimes there was a lot of chatter going on that was not business, and we realized people really just need they need an outlet. And they used to do that when they were sitting at the desk and they talked to each other. So they need to have the collaborative Teams, whether it's Slack or Teams or something else, chit chat. I encourage it.
Great.
Next, Sarah.
Yeah, okay, so this question is around team morale. So we talked about motivation a little bit at the during the discussion, but with layoffs happening and just maybe people being more anxious, we saw a lot of people put in the chat that they're feeling anxious or isolated. So what are some ways to boost team morale during this time?
I think there's a couple of things leaders can do. The first is not give in to the temptation of certainty. Everyone is craving certainty now. Clients are craving certainty. Your team is craving certainty. People are asking us, when do you think it's going to be over? I don't know. I have no medical acumen or any inside information. So it's tempting for a leader to want to comfort their team by providing that level of certainty, which we cannot commit to. But what's more effective is to provide the confidence that no matter what the circumstances are in the future, you are a team who will overcome. So saying, I'm not sure what the next 30 days holds for our customer base, but I am confident that we are a smart, innovative, and resilient team who will get through this. We'll do more in the long run than, oh, I think it'll probably be over in 2 weeks. And then when it's not, you have to reassess yourself and re-rally your entire team.
So transparency. I feel like being extremely transparent, which I feel this way anyways with our company. I think now more than ever, transparency is very important. You don't have to have all the answers, but I think it's about being transparent with the things you do know, with the things you don't know. But letting your team know, you know, if you've applied for PP, the payroll protection program, I wanted my team to know that. I wanted to know that I'm working towards continuity to reduce that anxiety. So I think it's about being in touch with emotions, understanding how people, you know, if you can look inside about your emotions, realize folks are feeling the same thing. So I think transparency is huge in these times. Next question, Sarah, or if anybody else had anything to add. And again, audience, I don't care what question you ask. Doesn't even have to be in the line of questioning that we're talking about. Ask
Yeah.
a question. If it makes you feel better to ask a question, you're just curious, ask away.
Yeah, nothing is off limits with us.
No.
Okay, so, and I apologize, my video is off because I'm having some weird internet bandwidth issues, and I don't want to lose the meeting, so that's why I turned mine off. But so Christopher is asking, how does a company create a sense of a noble purpose when the parent company is only concerned about financials? I have tried to create intrinsic motivators through pictures and stories of how our product was used long before this chaos arose, and I just couldn't get it to stick. Perhaps the situation the world is facing will be a catalyst for a head and heart change. Do you see that happening?
That's a great question.
This is a great question. So yes, this is a catalyst for a head and heart change. And it's happening for two reasons. One is, as Teresa said, this outpouring of compassion that we have for each other. So one reason is, call it spiritual, call it human, call it whatever you want. We are having an emotional reset, or we are thinking about what's really important. But there's also a very practical business reason why things are changing. And that is, a lot of people were moving to get away from transactional sales. People on the sales side, they wanted to become trusted advisors and partners with their clients. But what happened seemingly overnight, I guess during the month of March, is clients made the shift. And so clients now are absolutely clear on who has their best interests at heart and who doesn't. So there's a business reason and there's a very human soul reason why things are changing at the same time. So what do you do with that? So if you've tried to do it with stories and things like that, that was a good start. What I would suspect to be true is the reason it doesn't stick is because the cadence of day-to-day business is all about the money. And you're probably not going to change what you're getting from the top, especially right now. But there's one question that you can ask on every deal, in every sales meeting, in every pipeline review that will reset your team. And that's this question: how will the customer be better as a result of doing business with us? If every time one of your reps comes to you with a deal, when you all do pipeline reviews, when you start your sales meeting, you ask your team, I want one example this week of how a customer was better as a result of doing business with us, you will start to build a belief. And if you insert that question into your deal reviews, you will create that sense of purpose, and you'll build belief, and you'll create a more compelling team no matter what's coming down on you. I see Teresa nodding her head.
Yeah, that's something that has really resonated with us. And our sales meetings, we ask that question on all of our deal reviews. The other thing that we do, which has been really a shift for us internally, is on our quarterly all hands meeting. We used to have and celebrate the wins, which were closed won deals, but now we celebrate customer success stories. So we ask that question, and each person that is the point of contact for that customer will tell the customer impact story, and they'll tell us how we were able to, how the customer changed as a result of doing business for us, and it helps to kind of bring that intrinsic motivation into all of our daily work.
So I think that's again, I go back to Christopher's question. I think it's a terrific question.
Mhm.
And it was sitting in a leadership position here at the company. I was thinking to myself, what could Christopher do, if anything, to start to help move minds and hearts with
Mhm.
his leadership team? Because it's really a trickle down
Yeah.
issue. What could he be doing, or the individuals on this call be doing, to help make that shift?
So this is a really good point, because you need to understand the people above you aren't sitting there saying, we don't give two hoots about customers. All we care about is the money. They're just operating in the paradigm that they know and with the pressure they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing you can do to manage up is eliminate the false dichotomy. Instead of saying to them, instead of money, we need to be thinking about customers, change the language and say, you know what? You are absolutely right. These sales targets really matter. And I'll tell you, one thing that's made us really successful is a story about how we make a difference to customers, and then give them an example and have it directly connected to a win, a success that you had. Say, I think you might find this helpful because this story, tell the story, was so powerful for the team. And when they retold it to other customers, we were able to close more deals. So instead of expecting them to pivot and shift their mindset, show them that telling these kinds of stories accomplish their goals. One of the principles that we have in our business, one of our business values, is meet people where they are. And the reason that's our business value is because it's not easy for me. I want to get them there faster. So I'll let Elizabeth elaborate on the meet them where they are.
Well, I think it's a really crucial point right now, and Lisa and I have had a lot of conversations about this. And for a lot of people, the transactional nature of work is what we call a load-bearing neural pathway. It is a core belief that it has resulted in a million different decisions, a million different, life changes. If someone's core belief is that work is transactional, they may have taken a job early in their career that they didn't really like. They may have slugged it out longer than they wanted to. They may have gone home at night telling themselves that this is what they have to do for their family. So when you threaten that belief, it's really easy for people to become defensive. But I think what Lisa is getting to is adding on a layer of impact and maintaining that, yes, financials are important. Yes, we need to build this business for, the security of our employees, our families, and our customers. And also we can have fulfillment while we're doing it.
That's awesome. Hey, we're rounding out to the hour that we've allotted. Any other questions? Because we got one more minute to go, 2 minutes.
Yeah, the last question we have from Jerry Ann is, will we get a recording of this meeting? And the simple answer is yes. We will send the recording. You'll get it via email tomorrow morning, likely in your inboxes. We'll also be posting it on our website at brainsell.net.
That's awesome. So is that it for the questions, Sarah?
Let me, wait.
Oh.
Christopher said he really appreciates the feedback, very helpful, and he's taking it to heart. So thanks, guys.
I wonder, Christopher, could you, and I don't know if you feel comfortable with this, was it something you could do, and perhaps you could tell us in the chat or however you want to tell us, could you write, it almost sounds like to me it's a reverse case study or reverse user story. Instead of using it for clients, you're using it for your leadership team without being obvious about it, but you could send what your success was, give the story, and perhaps they will share that with your teammates, and that starts the shift. Is that something, Christopher, you think you could do? Just curious. I'm just waiting to see if he responds. I've never done this before that way.
He said he would be happy to.
Great.
That'd be awesome. Okay.
And
So
feel free to reach out to us. This is our specialty. We tend to be called by people who are already noble purpose sellers and say, help me with my boss. So
reach out to McLeod and Moore. And how do they get a hold of you?
If you just Google noble purpose, we will come up and you will click the contact button. Or if you want to follow us on LinkedIn, that's good. We do a LinkedIn Live now for the duration. We're here every Friday, and we're tackling a lot of these things on our LinkedIn Live.
And you're both on LinkedIn individually. They can connect with you there.
Yep.
They can ask questions there of you individually. That's okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Feed us questions and we'll cover them on the LinkedIn Live on Friday, or we'll answer them directly.
Awesome. So what I'm going to tell everybody before we leave is, do everything you can that's in your control. Wear your masks. wash your hands, clean your hands, and have a friend. I have Wilson. Have a friend to talk to. Wilson, not a volleyball, football for me. So stay healthy. We can't wait till the next time, and hopefully you'll join us again. And thank you to all our panelists, Lisa, Elizabeth, thank you so very much. Terrific. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Sarah, for putting this together. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, you
Thanks,
guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.